Hey, Molly.
Hi, Tanya.
How are you? Every single email that I sent you about this, I wanted to call you Malls, and I've never in my life called you Malls.
As long as it's with a Z, this distinction. This is Malls is like a childhood nickname, but as long as it is MOLZ, you'll hit my, soft spot. So,
alas, it would have to be Malls with a Z.
Yes. Yeah.
Canadian. But it was always in my mind. It was like, that's really weird because I've actually never, ever thought of you as a Malls until we started emailing back and forth about this. So I'm so happy that we're doing this conversation. We're going to be going on to Facebook Live in about, 30 seconds. And there's a replay that's going to be going out of this delicious conversation about joy.
Joy was the tattoo. Does it look like Yol in the camera?
So no, it's perfect. It might in the replay. It might actually go y'all.
It says joy.
It's joy. It's just joy. And we've got Heba here, and we've got Mandy, and we've got Kim. And thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, use the handy dandy orange button for your questions about joy.
Down below. I love it. And if you're watching on Facebook, click through to the Crowdcast because that's where the actual conversation goes on. We're not watching Facebook right now.
You're not watching Facebook right now. It's a Facebook free half an hour for the two of us, which is it's so good to be here with you. So this is the second week that I've run in the Spotlight, and this is the live show where I'm talking to stars, co-starring a conversation about something that I think is deeply meaningful to us stepping into our starring role, our leadership, our creativity. And last week I was talking to our pal, Randy Buckley, about boundaries. That was yummy, so delicious, which sounds so weird because there's very little that feels delicious about boundaries, but it was a great conversation. And I knew that from a very foundational standpoint, I needed to start with joy. And when I think of joy, I think of my gal Molly. So thank you for being, which is so great, right? Like, isn't it great?
Amy Smart on here too. That would have been like the joy trifecta.
The joy trifecta.
Next time.
La prochaine fois. I remember meeting you. We had known each other. Actually, I can't remember exactly where anyway, it doesn't matter, but I remember meeting you at the World Domination Summit in Portland.
Yes.
2012, possibly.
Probably.
Yeah.
Going way back.
And I had just written the joy pages, and because my mother had a mantra, don't postpone joy. Mm-hmm. And so this for me has been so deeply foundational to my work. And so when I wrote this, and I like gold stars, I remember meeting you in Portland being like, I've written this book on joy and I really feel like I need you to read it and give me your thumbs up on it because you've done such deep work with joy. And I know that it's expanded. So talk to me about joy, Molly. What is joy? There we go. What's joy?
What is joy? What is joy? Well, for me, it feels like it's the lead. It's the thing that makes everything else better, juicier, deeper, more aligned with who I am. And I think I adopted it as my both business, motto and personal life motto because I think it's undervalued. So part of my little, mission to live my life in celebration and inspire others to do the same, live with an authenticity and inspire others to do the same is to bring this idea that joy can be a forefront and it is a valid aim into the world because, right? Pleasure, joy, happiness, although sometimes we give like lip service to saying, yes, of course I want you to be happy. Really, if you look at our schedules and you look at our grind and you look at what people are celebrated for, money and success, being happy or joyful doesn't generally fall high on that, what we admire about other people. One of my missions is to change that it is okay. In fact, it's essential to your personal well-being to prioritize joy. And doing that, knowing we live in am I allowed to swear?
Oh my God.
In this fucking messy world. Like our world is so messy and there's so much that we can't control. But how we interact with that world through the lens of joy, I think is totally within our control. So,
okay. Yeah. I've got like 5 different things I want to ask already. So
I'll stop.
This bodes well. Okay. So you said that we undervalue it. You said that it's a valid aim. That made my heart just, I want to talk to you about happiness versus joy. And I want to talk about being able to control joy or being able to be able to access it. Yeah. And I'm just going to say, for anybody who knows my work, I talk about your brand of joy. And I just got red. That's funny. I wonder what that's all about. Anybody who knows my work, I talk about brand of joy because I think that one of the things that precludes our ability to really step into joy is that we don't actually know what it means. It's sort of like when somebody says to relax, and somebody tells me to relax, and I go through the roof because relax is not the right word for me. It's like, tell me to feel the way I feel when I walk through a museum and I'm surrounded by gorgeousness. That I can conjure. Relaxation, not so much. So I feel like when we talk about joy, it can be really a triggering word. I remember, Brene Brown said that joy is the hardest emotion to be with. So I think we'll talk about that. That feels almost like a separate thing. So what I want to just say is that I call what I refer to personally as what I refer to as joy. Other people have different words for it. And one of the things I think is very, one of the 5,000 reasons I want to have this conversation with you, Miguel, is that we have a very similar understanding of what joy is. Yeah. So for me, when I experience joy, I'm also experiencing connection, gratitude, and generosity. And you, when you are experiencing joy, what are you experiencing?
Authenticity, which a big piece of that is connection for me.
Yes.
Presence and gratitude.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I always think it's really important that we know what underpins our expression of joy. So again, for people watching, joy might not be the word of your absolute place of fulfillment, possibly, but I know that, anyway, and your word, so like my man's word for joy is success. Joy and success don't look anything similar to me, but his experience of what I call joy is the same. So what underpins that looks very different. Now, I think it's important, though, that we know this because when we go into, and so I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this. When I feel too far outside of joy, knowing those 3 underpinning values, connection, gratitude, generosity, is my on-ramp. Otherwise, it's just too big. I want to feel more joyful in this moment. I don't know. I'm feeling super miserable. How do I get there? So I can tap into what can I be grateful for in this moment? What can I give away? And how can I connect? Or whatever that is for me.
I have my own questions based on those words.
All right, go for it.
I know where you're going. How do you get there when you feel the furthest away?
Yeah.
Or whatever your one word is.
Yeah.
And yeah, my personal equation is what I use this for. Am I being me? So the authenticity piece. And yeah.
I heard you say, am I being mean? Like, oh, that's a different conversation. Okay. All right.
Me.
Am I being me? Okay.
Am I being myself? And for me, that is pretty self-expressed, connected. Like I know, I don't tend to, I'm not a serious person. I don't have it is a lightness. There's a playfulness in a genuine me feeling, the celebratory mode, I think. And speaking up, being expressed and being connected. So am I being me? Mm-hmm. Is that what's getting in my way of joy? Am I being present? And this has been a big piece for me because I'm a very heady person. I live in my head. I'm like intellectually curious. Even when I chose pleasure as my word of the year last year, I'm like, oh my God, what are all the pleasure books I can read? Like how much research can I do on pleasure? Right. So am I being present is that both like meditative reminder to be in this moment and let go of the past and let go of the future, but also like to be in my body. Because I can get all caught up in the stories in my head. Mm-hmm. So now, breath work, what are the senses? What is going on in this experience, in this moment.
Mm.
So am I here? And then am I grateful? Again, and that is a little bit of a buffer against this piece of me that knows I'm a striver, I'm radically ambitious, I have no problem. I feel like there's this backlash against wanting more right now. Like, I have no problem admitting I always want more. When will be enough? I don't know. But when I get too far off, right, too far on that spectrum, it pulls me away from joy. So am I also in the quest for more juiciness, more connection, more clients, more swim time, whatever it is? Am I grateful for what is already there? Gratitude. Am I being grateful for the great gift of my life? So yeah, those are absolutely a process back to joy. Short term, back to joy. Go in the world, with some great music on and drive in the sunshine. That is, maybe that's being present. That's one of my tricks.
Sounds like you.
That is very me, yes.
It's very you. So
what is yours? What is your like shorthand for you to be generous and with your other three? Like if I get in the car, turn on music and go.
It's simply, am I feeling connected? And it depends, because usually I'll know which one is already like, I'm not feeling it. Like stop, drop, and give thanks is my, like, I can always just, there's literally always something to be thankful for. And that makes me feel hot, like just not hot with shame, but just hot with awareness. Like, damn, there's always something to be. Look at this conversation right now. Look at this beautifully clean water. Like, it's so, so that's like really simple. That's the easiest one, I would say. And then finding a way to be generous. Usually what's happened if I'm out of joy, I'm feeling a little bit small, feeling a little bit like, kind of like closed off, not being, not giving of myself. Often connection's the harder one for me to reach to. So how do I feel more connected to myself? But then how do I connect with other people? Because that's huge. You know, how can I feel more connected to other people? And that usually it's related to a current situation. So sometimes I need to actually, if I am in a writing process or I need to just be insulated, then it's about connecting to my work, my purpose, my meaning, my, just feeling more connected to that. But that's usually the way I go. That's the gratitude, then the generosity, and then the connection. Because connection, I feel, and I feel like connection might even be the most important for me, because I feel like it is at the base of all of our desires and all of our fears. I think at the bottom of most of our fears of success and fears of failure, I think it's the same thing. We're fear of, like we want connection and we fear disconnection. I think that's.
I mean,
who likes
to feel lonely? I was thinking about my own, like, what do I do when I want to feel connected? And again, it depends on what brand of lonely I feel. I mean, I've got 2 toddlers in the house, and my husband, who's very affectionate in that way. But and this is going to sound ridiculous, but it actually works for me, and it is a useful way that I can take my love of gold stars and social validation and use social media. I'm like, let's post a selfie about how sad and lonely I feel, because someone's going to tell me they love me, and I know what I'm doing. So that, I think, is the okay piece. Like, I am very well aware. Give me my gold star. Then I'm like, yeah, feel better. Thank you for that. Feel connected, and of course, sometimes I like call or text, but I have no shame in my occasional need to connect in that way. It makes me feel better. It really does.
You know what I love about that too? I've been talking a lot about the idea of it being a model of possibility. I think it's really helpful for people to see that is true, that's a way that you would connect. Hi, Phoenix.
Hey girl.
I think that's a great, I think that's really beautiful to be able to model that. It's not something I think about very often. And maybe I'm doing it in other ways that aren't conscious, but I love that you bring some consciousness to it. Phoenix is reminding me that we need to just invite you, bring your questions over here. We are talking joy. We are talking all sorts of joy. If you're watching on Facebook, then come on over to Crowdcast. The link is there. Ask your questions. Facebook won't let you ask questions, or we won't see them. That's what's going to happen. Well, Mandy might see them, but anyway, just come on over to Crowdcast. That's where we are. So why does Brene Brown say that joy is the hardest emotion to be with?
Well, so I know, I know why she says it. It is not true for me. But I can connect it to other people's experience telling me, aka my husband, about this piece. I am not scared of joy. And I think it's because I don't have very much of that the other shoe's gonna drop storyline in my psyche. Which I think when she's explaining, or at least in my memory, it was a really scary emotion for people because what if it's taken away? What if I admit how much I love my child? What if I admit how soul-filling being on stage is, and then it goes away and I'm left all by myself in the cave? It never occurs to me that it's going to go away. So I'm not scared of it. This also means that I do ridiculous things like go on the biggest bungee jump in the entire world in South Africa and take a lot of it doesn't occur to me that the bungee cord might break and it might break on me. Now, my husband, joy is super scary for him because he has that storyline, which he will not do the crazy things with me physically. We had a very, very large and long and deep discussions about having a second child because he was convinced after our beautiful, amazing child, Max, we'd never be able to do that again. Like something terrible would happen. And it's the fear of joy that was driving that. So I think that's what she's saying. And I get it for other people. I just don't have a lot of it for myself. It makes me seem very hedonistic, I think, which again, I'm embracing in my definition of joy and pleasure and prioritizing things that feel good. Because for me, I think that's a piece of my source. It doesn't mean I'm not going to do good or be good as well, but that piece of my joy, I think is new. It's a new piece of the joy story for me that in the last year or so I've really been sourcing from, and it's making things feel juicier, viscerally better in my life. Yeah.
Right.
Why from the Brené Brown question.
Well, line number 8. So I talk about the imposter complex, as you know, and line number 8 is you'll never be able to pull that off again. That's what I've just decided, decreed that's what it is, right? So that's this, you're never going to be able to pull that off again. It's all just a matter of time, right? It's all just a matter of time. I think there's another piece too, and it relates to celebration, which is also a huge piece of your work, which is, and it's a big piece of my work too. And I think that, when we get in the academy or when people are working through my Step Into Your Summer Role playbook, and we get to that place of celebration, it's like, oh, sweet relief. We are here. We're here. We get to celebrate now. This is a huge time though when people lose it, freak out. And I think it's a bit the same, it doesn't feel safe to celebrate. It doesn't it doesn't often feel safe for people to be in joy, largely because, once again, that piece of connection. What if I'm standing here alone with my party hat and my sparklers and they don't show up? So I feel like there's something about joy being a tricky emotion to be with too, because we don't want to trigger other people, and we don't want to create any FOMO, and we want to, so I think that I feel like that that also feels like a part of it, but I think that that's a huge piece that I tend to overlook too, that it feels like there's a really transient quality to transient. I don't think that's what I mean. I think transitory quality, temporary quality. But I think you're actually speaking also to my understanding of what happiness is. So how does happiness relate to joy for you?
Well, I am pro happiness as well as pro joy. Let me just be clear. But I think happiness for me feels like a reaction to an external event. So whether the big events of your life, right? I get married, I have a child, I get the raise, I got into the school, my book gets published, I am happy, right? Gold star, external validation, yes. And I want those moments. I totally want those moments. I want my life to be full of those moments. But what feels lasting, and again, it's that interaction. It's how you go about life. to me, joy defines that so much better. It's this way of engaging with the world. It's the mindset you bring to the high points as well as the low points. Like, how do you be with joy when the shitstorm is abound, or when you're in the throes of the imposter complex, or when something really horrible has happened, or when you've done something really horrible, like all of which will be a part of our human experience. So can you use the lens of, your words, your brand joy to be there, to be steady in the experience of your life from the full spectrum. So joy feels like a tool, whereas happiness feels like a reward.
That's interesting.
I just came up with that right now.
That's so good. God, write that down. What did you say? I'll write it down. Joy feels like a what?
A tool, whereas happiness feels like a reward. Is that?
Yeah, that was it. I think about happiness as, I think it was Danielle Laporte who was talking about joy, happiness being like the bubbles, but joy being the oxygen. Maybe I got that wrong, but it's like, it's just this, but what I got from that is what you're saying too, this like very temporary quality. And I think that for me, it feels like when you're clear on how you can create joy, happiness has an easier time finding you. Like it sort of like primes the pump. So conditions of success, it's easier to find that. But it's like, the butterfly and the random wink.
And again, I want it all. I want it both.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Right. Totally. Yeah.
It feels like you have more control over joy because it's a lens, it's a tool, it's something you use, you practice. It's not something that like, oh, the bubble pop. It's like, this is how I live my life.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a valid aim. Why do we struggle with that? Why do we struggle with that?
Well, because who wants to say my whole purpose in life is to be joyful? Well, except for me. And you. And I think it doesn't feel, well, it does not hold value in the way that our patriarchal society has value in, even your husband's word. My husband's word is freedom, which is very much aligned with your husband's word of success. Right? To be happy feels selfish, feels frivolous, feels unimportant in the grander scheme of things. I think that is a story. Even when I'm kind of doing my pleasure research, or I'm all in pleasure mode because I just recorded this call, pleasure is the same way. We forget how vital joy, happiness, pleasure is to our experience of our life, to our well-being, and not just as the rewards, as the actual process of life. So I do think it's a valid aim, even when it's coupled, and it will be coupled with other things. Like my life's goal is not to just be joyful. My life's goal is to leave a legacy and create an incredibly connected family unit within our community. And, I have many expressions of me prioritizing joy that don't feel selfish to me. But I am also okay with saying a high aim of my day-to-day is to be in joy. And I just don't think that feels accepted in our very work ethic heavy, the world is falling, why be happy? There's serious work to be done. I don't think they have to go be a part. I think the serious work and the change our society needs and the consoling your family needs in death can be hand in hand with joy. I don't think they need to be separate. What is that? You might know this. I don't, some story or some quote about, you being starving doesn't help, like the starving children in Africa. You being depressed doesn't help others rise from depression. I don't know what there's some juicy, beautiful quote about that is not necessarily helpful to the uplevel that needs to happen.
Yeah, I think about this a fair bit in terms of this conversation, but also as it relates to the imposter complex. And, sometimes this work gets trivialized in that it's, there are institutional systemic issues that are designed to keep the current structures in place. So talking about the imposter complex often feels like we're like blaming the victims of the institutional structures. So where I always get a little up about this is that if we aren't able to stand in our truth when we know what is true, and when we can't overcome the imposter complex, when we are standing on the body, like the body of knowledge we actually hold is true, how can we change the damn thing? So I think about this, and hope this makes sense, as it relates to joy. If it is true that joy is a foundational aspect of how I'm here to do what I'm here to do, I can even do my darndest to find some joy in really trying times, bring some joy to comfort, bring some joy to activation, bring some joy to difficult conversations. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to look like, bubbles, but it's going to look like a place of connection and gratitude and hopefully generosity. And it actually feels for me the way into a lot of difficult places and spaces, which is what I've been working with for a number of years, because I think, and that's why I think it's important that we have our different understandings of what that actually means, what it means for us personally. And I don't know what that quote is, but we feel it, right? We feel like, how is it possible that I remember doing an interview with somebody and they showed up on the interview and she's a brilliant leader and somebody that I really look up to. Actually, it was Jen Loudon. I'll just name my gal Jen. And she showed up on the call, and it was a virtual retreat I was doing. And she was like, I'm just going to straight up, I'm in a really bad place today. So I immediately go, oh, she's like, no, no.
Not what we're doing. Yeah.
We need to be where we need to be. I'm just going to be, this just happens to be riding side saddle with me. I love that. That was such a brilliant moment of like, yeah. And then and we were actually talking about something similar and the way in which, so how can I be with that and the joy and the grief and the purpose and all of that, and just have bringing in that awareness around it? Because it's the multitude, right? Like we are never in this one specific place. Yeah. You were going to tell me about something. Oh, you're going to tell me your morning routine, because I do want to talk about practices.
Yes. Well, this is actually a story of using your guiding word. So mine is joy, yours is joy, to make everything easier. And what was coming up for me when you were just talking was, whatever word that is for people listening, it makes everything sustainable. And I think that is an overlooked word. When I try to do things through different lenses that do not feel joyful or celebratory or inspiring, I can't make it last because it goes against who I truly am. So this story is an example of that. I have had literally on my year goals for many years, but specifically for 2 years, the last 2 years. Yeah, since I had Juliet and we were done breastfeeding, it was like, I want a morning routine. I want to be one of those women who meditates. And in my mind, I meditated in front of my altar with my hippie shaggy sheepskin rug thing over there. And then I drank a cup of green tea and wrote in my journal. I've always been a journaler, but a very specific morning practice. And then I the pleasure of maybe do a hip circle dance but I've never been able to yank myself out of bed for that. So then I was like, let's try it at night, or let's do it at the beginning of my work day, or maybe it's not, morning. And even my husband was getting up for the last probably year, hour to 2 hours before me to have his little man version of a morning routine. And I would still sleep in my bed until the kids would come jump in my bed with me. I mean, this is still early to get up at 7 a.m. I didn't have it. And I was in this family group. Doesn't matter. We were having a conversation with a bunch of adults about our one word and what that meant in how we show up in our life. And
pause 1 second. Pause. Because Phoenix, listen up, because I think that Molly's about to answer your question.
Ooh.
Because Phoenix has a question. So just carry on, but just because she's asking about how to stay present and joyful, be happy with what's currently in front of me, to not feel like an imposter in a world of chaos and institutional regulation. Okay. So here's what I'm saying, this because You're talking about routines and you're talking about bringing it together. And I think that this is keys to the puzzle right here. So go ahead.
Okay. Yes. So the question was to myself, okay, how can I bring joy into my morning routine? Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, you know what? No part of me like lights up and vibrates about the idea of sitting my ass on that little shaggy rug. Even though I like how it looks. I like having a shaggy rug. But what do I love? I love to be outside. I love to listen to great music. I love to drink my coffee with full cream in the morning. And I don't want to give up any of those things. So what if my morning routine is that? What if my way of greeting the world and having an hour to myself is to embrace my definition of joy? And it was literally, it went from, that was a Sunday. Yeah, that was a Sunday. And I said this in front of my husband, so he heard me like declare this to this group. The next morning, he literally woke me up and tapped me on the shoulder. And it was late at this time. It was like, he's like, hey, the kids are going to be up, but didn't you want to go for a walk? And I look at him and I'm like, I do. Okay, thank you. and I grabbed my little backpack and I just like rolled out of bed and I put my backpack on with my thermos of coffee and I got my journal and I put my big pink earphones on, and I never get to listen to podcasts because I don't have a commute or anything. So I put my one podcast that I like, which is Krista Tippett's On Being in. Mm-hmm. And I live at the beach and I walked down to the beach and I perched on a bench about a half an hour away and wrote in my journal and I walked back. It was about an hour. And I just looked at Ken and I said, yeah, that is it. And it's been 3 weeks now and I've done it in the pouring rain and I had to set my alarm. So I had to decide that as much as I love my identity of someone who did not have to get up with an alarm, that was like a gleeful piece about not having a job like way back when. But I've outgrown that. I don't need that to be a piece of my identity anymore. I want to identify as someone who has this beautiful hour to herself every day. And that I give myself that gift. So I get it. It's 6 a.m. My alarm goes off. Roll into my sneakers, pour the coffee in the thermos.
Love it.
And I know it's only 3 weeks in, but it feels sustainable because it is birthed in my brand of joy.
Yes. Feel it. I feel it. My wheels are spinning about how I can bring that, because I hadn't thought about that in terms of, I think about it in terms of how I approach certain things, but I'm starting a new routine next week that relates to exercise and writing. And so I'm going to think through how I can bring some more of that. So Phoenix, I hope that you're looking for suggestions to stay present and joyful. So I think that Molly's given you some clues here. You need to be looking for those things that offer you presence and joyfulness in a specific moment that you can drop into. Do you have any other? Because presence is so big for you, Molly, we are actually out of time now. So anybody who's watching and staying only until the 30-minute mark, follow on Crowdcast. You can find out when we've got more of these In the Spotlight conversations happening. Next week will be Tara Natilli and I talking. Yay! Yeah, love Tara so much. She was just here for a couple of days. It was bliss. So any thoughts, Molly, on presence? I mean, I feel like you've just given us a lot to be thinking about in terms of our own routines, because I think that's a piece.
I think Phoenix, Michelle, I think that this idea of coming into the moment through pleasure or through breath is just a reminder to come back into your body, and also the hard pieces, the boring pieces, the crap, whatever your day is made up of sometimes, how can they be more pleasurable? And pleasurable through your senses. Can you sit on the fuzzy rug? Can you wear something that is more, can you bring a beautiful lamp into your cubicle because it gives you that glow light so you can turn off the, the overhead? Like, what does it look like to bring more pleasure into what already is? Like, that brings me more joy. I listen to music and I literally have these giant noise canceling headphones that I work to because it brings me joy to pay the $9.99 on Spotify to make music mixes for myself for every mood. Like, that is a being present and pleasurable in the rest of my life. That helps me. Those little things too. It doesn't have to be big experiences.
No, and that's really actually. It's really important to name that, like even $9.99 is a lot of money for some people. Like, and it's just it's about finding our own. I think the senses are so important. Like, what is the smell? What is the touch? What is the taste? What is that just, how can you just drop in and create some space in a moment? Beautiful stuff. Molly, Thanks for being here, sweetheart.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for talking joy with me.
Yeah, every time. What's going on with you and your work? Joy equation?
Oh, yeah. If anyone's watching this and they're new to me, we are running our signature course, the Joy Equation, which is 6 weeks of clarity and planning about bringing more of this, more authenticity, more true you-ness to how you live your life through lots of different lenses, through values, through definition of success, through which relationships you need to nurture, which big dreams are true for you. A big piece of what I've found for people is the thing that gets in the way of joy, or whatever your guiding word is, is that you are living out this life that is expectation after expectation after expectation that is not yours, whether it's society or your family unit or that professor who really wanted you to do a certain thing. We forget how to connect to our truth, our trueness. So this course helps you like unpeel a lot of that and then build it back up within your own vein of joy.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And we're going to start May 5th.
May 5th. So that's next week. Yeah.
Next Friday. Yeah. Next Friday. Registration is open.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. We'll put that in Crowdcast for anybody watching the replay. They can get information on that. Honey, I loved this. Thank you so much. I wanted fun. I wanted, when I created in the spotlight, it was an answer to my desire for more fun in what I've been doing on a weekly basis. So thank you for proving my theory.
You're in connection, you're in generosity, and you are in gratitude for your pal. Bing! Of course it works for you.
Crack the code, baby. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye, all.